Hi guys, how's it going? Today we're going to start off with a little potato harvest. We're just going to harvest one of the varieties. I also need to pull a few more onions that are ready to be pulled. I'm going to pick some corn. We need to stake up some pepper plants. We had a big storm come through this past weekend and it was really windy here at our house and it rained a ton, but we didn't lose anything big. Like a couple pepper plants are laying flat. We lost a few branches out of willow trees, but nothing major. There was like a microburst over my parents' house in that whole area, and like roofs were being lifted off buildings, huge winds. My parents lost a huge portion of a big maple tree that kind of hangs over their house. One of the branches did land on the roof, very minimal damage. They have to have a little bit of their rain gutter replaced in that area, and then it just kind of like rubbed the shingles in one little spot, but there was no structural damage, thank goodness, and nobody was hurt, but everybody lost trees in that whole area. I mean, like whole trees were down on the ground. So we spent a good portion of yesterday out there helping my brother and sister, and Aaron and I and our kids all went out there and did what we could to help out. But anyway, we just are doing a little bit of cleanup from that today, and it's been overcast on and off, and I've been in kind of a like cozy cooking mood. I spent the first few hours inside, so I'm gonna have to go back and forth because I've got banana bread in the oven, I've got a cinnamon pull-apart bread dough rising right now, and I have a ham ready to go in the oven this afternoon. Just like in the mood, like willing fall here to be here, maybe fall temperatures. But anyway, this is what we're looking at to begin with. Not the most beautiful of projects, but I always enjoy digging potatoes because it's kind of like a treasure hunt. Now I have pulled several of these plants already. We've been eating these potatoes already and they're really tasty. So this variety is the Huckleberry Gold right here. Let me pull that out. They are a 90 to 100 day potato. We've got, oh, what are these? Can't remember. How come I can never remember these? German butterball, and these haven't died back enough yet. You can still see nice green foliage while these are looking all ratty and gross. We could leave them a little bit longer if we wanted to because they do have some life left in the bottoms, but overall pretty bad. And then we'll do our red Pontiacs later on. Boy, you can even just see like right at the soil surface. I don't even know if I want to pull that. There's tons of potatoes just right there. Cover them over. The soil out here is crummy, like worse than the soil out over here. And I don't know if the difference is this used to be a lawn for years and years. And I kind of thought, well, you know, if it was a lawn, it belonged to our neighbors before we were able to buy it. And I thought with all those years of like irrigation and all of that, this land or this ground would be a lot better than it is. And it's not. The other part was kind of like raw pasture. And we grew a bunch of stuff out there. Was it year before last or last year? I can't remember. Tons of things and everything grew beautifully. And we've had a little bit of struggle out here with the compaction of the soil. Like it's just so hard. So it's just been interesting to see the difference between the areas and the difference between years too. You know, things change from year to year. But we're gonna go in with our digging fork, kind of a little bit of a distance away from the plants. I doubt this one has very many because I dug around in here and harvested potatoes right from underneath plants. Then we just pry them up, kind of shake them off, and find our potatoes. I'm actually surprised that one had the potatoes it did. But look at that. Nice, great big potato. Oh, there's another one. I brought a couple of crates out with me, and we're just gonna harvest them right into these crates. These are the ones that the bulbs come in, like our bulk bulbs, when we order from Color Blends. And it's nice because they have air holes on the bottom, on the sides, so they can dry out without having to really lay them out like we do some other things, or in other years when I've harvested them, we've laid them out in the barn on the floor and we just don't have the room on the floor in there anymore. So I'm just gonna leave them straight in these crates for a little while to cure, but I'll go over all of that here in just a minute. Let's just get all these dug. So we'll be working from here to there. One. Tons of worms in the soil, so that's good. We're just conditioning it up for next year. shade of that. All right, these potatoes have been dug, and we got exactly the amount I thought we would. I grabbed 2 crates thinking, well, I could fill them about half or maybe 3/4 of the way full and then still be able to lift them. Whenever I filled these all the way full in the past, it is really hard to move them around. So I thought 2 would be sufficient for that amount of potatoes, and it turns out that's exactly what we got. And they vary in sizes, just like every single year. We've got some nice, great big ones. We've got some little itty bitties. So at this point, what we will do is let them dry. This crate has a lot more mud around them because the water turned on. When we were inside working with our stuff, the water turned on. So this harvest has a lot of just drier soil stuck to them, while this one's going to take a little bit longer to dry out. But usually we leave them out kind of like onions to cure for 10 to 14 days, something like that. The difference though with the potatoes versus the onions is that onions can be in a bright spot. I put them in the high tunnels where we've got shade cloth over the high tunnels, so it's still real bright in there. Good airflow. You want somewhere with good airflow for the potatoes, but you don't want them exposed to light, because then that starts to form that, that green potatoes toxicity. I can't remember what it's called. Why can't I remember that? Doesn't matter. Just don't put them in a real bright sunny spot. So typically, like in the past, we put them out on the floor in the barn and then just cover them with burlap sacks or something like that, just so that air can still go through those sacks and they can still dry out, but they're not exposed to light. So what I'm going to do is just leave them in these crates because these are breathable, and I'll just cover them with burlap sacks, and that way they're taking up far less floor space if we keep them in here. So that curing process for potatoes helps cure the skin around them so that they store longer. Right now, I guess you could, I don't know if you'd consider them new potatoes, but usually a new potato, like if you come in like this and use your thumb and try to rough the skin, yeah, see that? That skin is not cured, and you don't want to put these in storage when they're like that. So you want them to have a chance to be exposed to air so that that skin has a chance to dry. This one, cannot rough it up. Oh, a little bit. But this one's definitely further ahead than that one. So the curing process then is really just for a couple of reasons. It's to let them dry out so that you're not accidentally introducing any extra moisture into storage. So, at the end of the curing or drying process, we will kind of brush some of this loose soil off just to make sure, especially if it's thicker on some potatoes. And then it also allows that skin to dry out. Both things just help improve storage life. Okay, so now we're gonna grab a few more onions here. I think they're still mostly the candies. It's like a couple Walla Wallas. We came in here the other day and harvested a lot of these candies. Looks like there's just a few left. So again, we come in here, any onion, look at that, the water's not running anymore. But this is how hard the soil is. It takes it forever to make it through. But we look for onions that have stems that have flopped over. So that one's ready. So let's grab these. We'll take the potatoes to the barn so they can start drying out, and then we'll take the onions to the high tunnel, add them to the ones we've got in there, and then we'll grab some stakes for our pepper plants. Also, I realized after because I just showed you what I was working on in the kitchen, I was noticing that my dough for my cinnamon pull-apart bread didn't look like it rose very well. I thought, what in the world is going on here? I don't usually have issues. Like, I know what it's supposed to look like, but it seemed like a little dense and like it just didn't have a lot of air in it. I accidentally added way too much sugar to the dough. I added the sugar that it called for the filling, like the cinnamon sugar filling, instead of like the little amount you add for the yeast, which too much sugar in dough causes problems with it rising. So go figure. Yeah, I just racked my brain and I looked over my recipe over and over and I thought, what did I do wrong? Might have to start that one over, but it isn't going to be pretty. I've never made a pull apart loaf like that. I mean, cinnamon rolls, sure, but not like in layers like that in a loaf pan. I think it's going to be gorgeous if I can get it right. All right, I'm going to pull forward a little bit. Got my onions, candies, Walla Wallas, yellow sweet Spanish. And my phone timer is going off because the second rise on this dough should be done. Let me go check it out. And we just have a small handful of candies left. They'll probably be ready to harvest in the next day or two. And then we've got quite a lot of Walla Wallas and yellow sweet Spanish yet to go. Oh, here comes Paul with the branches that we lost in the storm. Look at that. You're cutting a wide swath there, Paul. What's that? I think so, yep. And a little pile right there. Okay, I'm hoping that it rose decently. I mean, I don't know that we're out anything just to bake it to see what happens. Well, it rose a tiny bit. It's still looking fairly dense. I don't think we're out anything just to go ahead and bake it, see how it turns out, but I'll probably start it over just so we can have a nice loaf by the end of the day, hopefully. Okay, second batch of dough is rising, and the first one is in the oven. It's got 15 more minutes, so we can run and at least unload the onions and grab our steaks for the peppers. Here's how the first batch are looking. You can see that they have dried down quite a lot. It's been 2 or 3 days since we did this. So anyway, happy with that. These are candies, those are Walla Wallas, and then I'll start a new section with yellow sweet Spanish right over here. There we go. So one full table and part of another one. Yellow sweet Spanish sized up nicely. They're all about this size. All right, back up and try not to go over the edge. So we need to find some steaks, but you know what? It's nice and like darker in here. I think I'm just gonna drop the potatoes off in here, and then I'll go find some burlap or something like that to put over the top of them. But it stays nice and warm in here. You do wanna let them cure in a warm-ish spot. You just wanna make sure that it's well ventilated. And you know, with this, with the open doors and stuff, it's getting plenty of air in here, and then they won't be in the way at all in the white barn. Let's see, I was thinking for the pepper plants, I'm gonna grab like some of these. I don't know how many we're gonna need. These will be sufficient though, I think. There we go. That's perfect. I went ahead and set them on an empty crate so that there was even more airflow through the bottom. And then I found some burlap sacks which cover the sides and the top, so they're not exposed to any direct light. I think this will be perfect. And I just set an alarm for 10 days from now so that I could remember that they were back here so we could come and clean them and get them into the root cellar. And in the root cellar, they'll store at about 35 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit. And usually the humidity is right around 60 to 70%. It varies a little bit, but that's kind of where we found our happy medium to keep all of our crops happy. But I do think you can store potatoes a little warmer than that. I'd have to look at my chart to verify. Here are the pepper plants. Oh, look at those two just leaning over. So I think we can just prop them up from one side with these, and then I'll put one on the other side too, just in case. Okay, I'm gonna be careful though, because I don't want it to snap off at the base. Oof, these are heavy. I need to probably harvest. That would help. There we go. In case the wind comes from the other direction. Got it on both sides. Yeah, that's looking a little more perky. All right, there we go. Everything else pretty much fared okay in here. I mean, like even the stalk is upright. These zinnias got blown around a little bit. They were such a beautiful, perfect looking stand, and now they're kind of leaning over and such, but that's okay. They still have pretty flowers on them. They're just starting to bloom. But my timer did go off, so we can go check the bread that we're baking, see how it looks. Do you hear the construction noise? That's the shop being worked on that's directly behind the raised bed garden. They're working on the foundation right now. It turned out beautiful. Look at that. Oh, it smells good. It's got a nice sound. We'll just have to let it set, or we have to let it cool for 10 minutes, and then you make a powdered sugar sort of glaze to go over the top. Okay, let's see how this looks underneath. Oh, kind of like the way it looks. This looks too square. I'm gonna do it like this. Oh, it's so pretty. Look at that. Oh, it smells amazing. Okay, I think I'd like to let it cool off all the way before we glaze it. Okay, this dough is looking so much better than my first batch, even though the first one baked up pretty nicely. All right, guys, so the second batch of dough has risen, and it rose quite a bit more than the first one. Although, I mean, that's beautiful. So we're gonna bake this for 30 minutes, see how much different it looks in the end. All right. Whoop, gotta find a spot on the counter. I've been baking it up today. This is attempt number 2. Definitely a little bit taller, and these pieces got puffier. It doesn't look all that different. So maybe it wasn't worth it. We'll know when we taste it. But now I've got to let that cool before we glaze. All right, you guys. So this is our second loaf right here. It looks and smells so delicious. I usually try to keep the recipes that I'm making kind of like garden related. This one really has nothing to do with it, except for I did get the egg that I used in the dough, which I will link the recipe down below, but I got it from our chickens outside. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And it seems to be like all done, and I have made the glaze. So this is powdered sugar, vanilla, and milk, and I made it on the thick side. We're just gonna give it a good drizzle. Erin suggested I make an extra little container of this to have on the side so you could dip your bread in it as well. Not a bad idea. Oh, look at that, it looks so good. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna save some back. I made a double batch so I could frost this first one. Also, I did bring my potatoes in because I'm making mashed potatoes and gravy to go with our ham. So I just wanted to show you what a Huckleberry Gold potato looks like on the inside. So purple skin on the outside, and it's kind of like a creamy, light yellow interior. They're just a really good potato. So anyway, let me get you closer to this and we'll peel it apart. Okay, first off, take a good look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So they just come apart. Well, maybe easily, maybe not. Whoop. That is tasty. Now, a person could get a plate and eat it with a fork, but I'm not going to right now. You could probably even do more of the filling, I'm guessing, because it kind of looks like it disappeared a little bit into the bread. You kind of want to chase it a little bit. So here's a close-up of our second loaf right here, and a close-up of our first loaf, which honestly, the color on the first loaf is a little bit better. Doesn't that look just decadent? Oh my goodness. And here's a look at the inside. That first piece didn't want to pull off because it was all the way underneath that second piece, but it's really good. I baked it for about 5 extra minutes and I feel like that was perfect. My oven is weird though, so you probably wouldn't have to do that. Also, a little bit of a closer look at these potatoes. Aren't they beautiful? I think they're just so pretty. And that, oh, perfection. And you guys, that is gonna do it for our projects for today. I spent probably more time inside than I did outside today, but it feels hot. It feels like muggier than normal out there. And I'm happy that we got the potatoes that were ready and the onions that were ready harvested and the peppers taken care of course, but it's fun every once in a while just to kind of focus a little bit more time inside. It smells so good in the kitchen right now. I mean, we did banana bread, 2 loaves of the cinnamon pull-apart bread. I have another batch of rolls rising and I've got a ham in the oven. So like all day, it just smells like coziness and I love it. Anyway, that is going to do it for today's projects. I will leave a link for the cinnamon pull-apart bread in the description down below. That is not my recipe. I found it online and definitely worth making. I would probably up the amount of filling just a little bit, but not a lot. Anyway, see you guys in the next video. Bye.